All right, people. In this episode, we're going to talk about how, whether we like it or not, we all have an impact on each other. So use it for good.
I'm Sienna.
And I'm Toast.
We're partners in love, life, and music. And we've been together since 2001.
With each episode of this podcast, our goal is to help our fellow LGBT community members lift their lives to the next level.
Okay, hello.
Hi. This is Toast.
And this is Sienna.
Okay, so we're going to talk about making an impact in this episode. But first, we wanted to give a quick shout out because we got a great email from one of you, podcast listener. But this person also happens to be one of my former coworkers. And we're talking from like over a decade ago, like really long time ago.
A really long time.
From before when I knew I was gay.
Yes. Which is the reason, or one of the reasons, she emailed us.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to provide a piece of Toast's history that might be helpful in the healing and coming out process of your memory of it.
Right.
Right?
And for other people. I think this is really interesting. I never thought of this.
It's good. There's some information here.
So check this out. Okay, listen to this.
So this is Chris speaking. This is her email speaking to us.
And now to all of us.
And we got permission, by the way, to share this portion of her email. Okay. So, and just to remind you, so Toast was a radio, what is it?
Disc jockey?
Okay.
No,
it was like broadcaster, DJ,
all kinds of
host,
stuff.
radio
yeah,
host.
It was a very small team, so we all did multiple jobs.
Okay, so Chris writes, you and your co-host Deb were talking near me, and one of you said something about having recently heard or read that, unlike men, women don't usually know they're gay until they're in their 20s. Then Deb said in a sarcastic tone, "What? They decide they're gay after they get burned by a man?" At that point, I jumped in, so Chris jumped in, and explained that it's because of the difference in our physiology. For boys, once they hit puberty, it's obvious if they are attracted to other boys. Girls, on the other hand, can get a warm and fuzzy feeling around another girl and not recognize it as sexual attraction. At that point, Toast said something along the lines of,
Interesting. And then probably in a silent voice in my head, I probably said, "Oh, I think I'm gay." I don't know. But I don't know if I've ever heard it explained that way, but it does totally make sense.
It totally makes sense. I had a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings, yeah. 6th grade, 7th grade, and I would never have thought it was gay feelings.
And maybe now it's different. Maybe girls now, because of the culture being more accepting of gay people and lesbian people and bi and trans and stuff. Maybe girls now that get the warm fuzzy feeling, they do consider whether it's like, oh, maybe I'm gay. Whereas when we were growing up, I think that wasn't even like a category to think in.
Yeah, maybe.
So thanks, Chris.
Yeah. I didn't think it was an option.
Right.
Until I got teased. I was teased like so-and-so, whatever. Anyways, whatever.
Okay, well, that's going to relate to our main topic of this episode later, because we have some interesting statistics for you folks. But before we get there,
wait, I wanted to say that what I got teased about was that in school they would say so-and-so likes you, so-and-so likes you. And they would say all that. And I'm like, what are they even, like, what? No, that person, she doesn't like me. But then I was like, oh, wait, maybe she does. And maybe I like her. So anyways, that relationship we will talk about that later because that has an impact later.
Yep.
It's kind of okay. So, let's see, what are we talking about?
First, a little interlude.
Oh, okay, yes.
About the wild animals in our backyard.
Oh my God. Okay, so here, can we just talk about rain for a moment?
Okay.
Okay. So here's
not the rain that falls from the sky.
Not the rain that falls from a sky. A beautiful human being
whose name is Rain.
Yes, and she happens to be my first cousin that I never knew I had, and she also happens to live in Portland. What are the chances of that?
What's up with that?
Right?
Family drama.
But the great thing, I will say, is that just knowing she's there, just knowing she's here, we've seen her only twice, right? We text often, but it's just so comforting. So even just knowing she's there, even that alone has an impact. If we want to kind of loop that into our topic today, that has an impact. But the wonderful thing is not just knowing she's there, she is a crazy animal lover. And I love that.
Like you.
Like me kind of animal lover.
It was really neat to meet her and discover that.
Yeah.
Because you're related. Mm-hmm. You're first cousins?
Yeah, first cousins.
First cousins that you never knew, and you never knew this until literally a month or so ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You literally did not know each other existed.
No, I did not.
But you have a first cousin. She happens to live in Portland. You guys meet and you discover that you have this commonality.
Yes.
Which I think is really neat.
Okay, so Toast loves animals, right?
Right, but not like
she
guys.
Doesn't love animals like I love animals and how Rain loves animals and some of my California friends love animals. The way we love animals is kind of on this
here's
level.
I think the difference is for you guys, animals will distract you against your will. They will pull you with a tractor beam of attention, right? And me, when I see a cute dog or
you're like,
cat,
oh, it's cute, and you don't even need to go and try and pet it.
I don't need to.
No.
But you feel
I need to be, I will go up there. But also, I guess it's just, there's an empathetic side.
Yes.
Where we just can feel an animal.
Right.
So if an animal is suffering, we feel it. If an animal needs food, we feed it. If an animal needs a home, we give it a home or we find it a home. And throughout the process, we are feeling our way throughout the process, and it's very emotional.
I think that's the empathic person. I think that's the soul with. And
a lot of people have that with human beings. But I think Rain and I have it very much so with animals and with humans too, but really with animals. And like, for instance, she feeds animals outside of her apartment, squirrels, but she even actually has a rat. Well, had a rat. There was an issue with the environment there, but it's a sad story. But his name is Remy Ben. And then one day, I saw a rat in our yard.
In our backyard, guys, we saw...
running along the fence.
A rat.
A rat in daylight. And I thought, oh my
close
God.
to... not like at 12 noon. It was like
6, but it's still lit.
Yeah, where it was approaching twilight, But yeah, it was definitely still lit and semi horrified. To be like, oh my God, there's a rat.
But he was cute, though. He was so cute. Okay. So anyways, I just started calling him Remy Ben the second. Remy Ben 2. So I texted her and all this kind of stuff. So anyways, pretty soon,
Yeah,
we had two of them. Remy Ben brought his wife. And then pretty soon, he brought his kids. So here's the thing. It got a little horrifying. So
a little Alfred Hitchcockish.
So and they were eating.
Cockian? How do you say that? I'll let Alfred
Hitchcockian. They were eating out of one of our bird feeders. They apparently eat bird seed. They were eating out of that bird feeder. So we are no longer putting bird seed in that. But once in a while, I will say I will put some apple chunks in there from the core of my apple, slice it up and put it out there. And that's fine because they can take it and leave.
Yes. And
so
we don't just
seen...
have to like quote unquote waste a core. I mean, I know you can put it in the compost, but I love being able to
eat it.
Yeah, exactly. I love being able to just return things
and what's so
to
great
the earth, directly.
They can just grab the piece, bring it home to their families, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of bringing the whole crew over for a buffet.
Right.
So I love that.
Yeah. It's a little, once we started seeing multiple rats, it was kind of like, okay, like slow down on the feeding of the wild animals.
I know, but I never would think they would eat birdseed. I don't know.
Right.
And it's far away from our door, so that was good. It's the farthest away bird feeder that we have that's very close to the trees. Yeah. And so, anyhow, should we talk about Ballhorn?
Yeah. So
we're looking here. Here's the thing. There was a moment of silence because I'm looking at Toast like, are we going to talk about Ballhorn or should we not talk about Ballhorn?
So I don't know about you, but the two words together, Ballhorn, just has kind of a vulgar, crude, crass ring to it. Well, to me.
Okay.
Ballhorn.
Not to me because I know what I meant.
I
called him Ballhorn.
I know what you meant too, but it's still kind of gross feeling. Okay, so we're just sharing this because we can't be the only ones who give names to the wild animals in their backyard. So we never imagined that we would do this, but it makes total sense that we did. We saw a really giant, I'm talking like a 6-inch long, wouldn't you say it was about 6 inches long?
He might have been longer.
6-inch long slug on our back patio in the middle of the Portland rain.
Yeah,
and I was the one who saw him first, and I was like, "Oh my God, there's this giant slug!" And I called Sienna over to see it.
Well,
and
you said
it had the antennas right in the front and everything.
But you said I couldn't run over like immediately when Toast was saying this. So she said, "There's a slug." Or it's a snail without its house. And I said, well...
Because I'm not educated about the difference between snails and slugs yet.
But here I am thinking that I am an expert in snails and slugs. And I'm like, well, does he have the ball horns? Because I couldn't think of like, they're not antenna, right?
Well, what we learned from Google is that... Actually, I Googled and I found from the Oregon... Department of whatever, wildlife or whatever, that they're called tentacles. Like those two things that stick up from their head, those are actually called tentacles. But we just referred, in our ignorance, we referred to them as horns. And they have the little balls at the end. So
like it's a perfectly round ball on the end.
So we named this slug
Ballhorn.
Male or female Ballhorn.
His name is Ballhorn. Yeah. And I thought that if he had ball horns... I thought if he had those, he was really a snail. Because to me, the slugs I've seen don't have the ball horns on them. So I thought, okay, if he has ball horns, he's a snail. But then what the hell happened to his house? Mm-hmm. If he doesn't have ball horns, he is a common slug.
Okay. Well,
but turns out this guy, Ballhorn, is
he must be a slug because we also learned from the same Oregon PDF that slugs do not have shells and snails do have shells, and that's that. And there are all kinds of slugs, some that are 6 inches long, obviously.
Yep.
So
and different patterns. There's a banana slug.
Had the Ballhorn slug there.
Ballhorn.
And it's just...
But anyways, and here's the thing. This is how geeky we are, that we would actually look this stuff up, and it wasn't even for the podcast. It's like, well, I wonder, what are those things called? We're calling them ball horns, but they're not antenna, so what are they called? I mean, I know they're not called ball horns, but
gosh. Outside of this house, they're not called ball horns. But in this house, they're ball horns.
But anyways, we looked this kind of stuff up. Anywho, so our topic today, should we just move on with our topic?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. Slugs and snails, for that matter, do have an impact.
Everything
has an impact.
There are no small things. Everything makes a difference.
So our topic.
Well, you have to tell them how...
well, it's kind of sad. I was trying not to say it. Okay, so slugs and snails, the impact they have in the environment is that they serve as food.
They're near the bottom of the food chain.
They are. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So...
Yes. So they're eaten by like birds and stuff, right?
Right.
Like, okay.
Right.
All right.
They are. They're eaten by many things.
Okay.
So our topic today.
You make an impact.
Yes.
Whether.
Yes.
And that's the thing is like, this is one of those things where it's like, none of us can truly abdicate any kind of responsibility, because if we are alive, and we are, if we're listening to this, then we do have an impact on others, right? And the reason this is important is because you could literally, with the impact you have, save someone else's life.
You can. And
here's where I just want to run through some statistics. And this is relating, Sienna, back to what you said about, when you were a kid and you were being teased and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So I found this really enlightening for myself. The Human Rights Campaign came out recently with a report on LGBTQ youth. And they defined youth as being from 13 to 17 years old. They had 12,000 respondents, people between 13 and 17 from all 50 states, plus Washington, D.C., that responded to a survey. And in this survey, they found that the amount of people who report feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness in the past week was more than 70% of those respondents. In addition, they found that 24% of respondents said they can definitely be themselves at home as an LGBTQ person, right? Which means that 76% cannot. And these next two statistics are not in this report, but I found it from the HRC website. And I was kind of like, what, for real? Oh, no, I'm sorry. These next two things are in the report. It's also relating to LGBTQ students. So in 13 states, plus the District of Columbia, there do exist protections for students on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, meaning stuff like access to facilities like bathrooms, sports teams, clubs. Only 13 states plus the District of Columbia protect students on the basis of this. And the way that I interpret that, I mean, I'm a layperson, but to me, that means that basically it's perfectly legal to discriminate in 38 states.
That's crazy.
It's completely legal, right? And similarly, when we're talking about housing, right? Housing discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Only 20 states prohibit this discrimination. And 2 states prohibit this discrimination based on orientation only, not on gender identity.
That's crazy.
So basically, it's perfectly legal to discriminate based on sexual orientation and gender identity in 29 states. So even though there really is a lot of progress being made about LGBTQ rights and visibility and acceptance and all of that, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. There's still so much that needs to change. It's not a legal protection that you can take for granted.
Right. So I just wanted to go through that because it kind of...
important.
Yeah, and it kind of explains, I think, my emotional state in the story that I will now tell you about my past.
Yes.
An instance in my past that illustrates this whole thing of you make an impact. So this story took place when I was in college, and it's kind of, looking back on it, I'm kind of in shock myself because it feels like it was another person. It feels like it was a time in my life that is kind of like in a glass box on a
shelf,
on a museum pedestal, and that's I hardly ever think about it. But when I did for this podcast, I'm just realizing like, wow, I think that was a really super pivotal moment.
Yeah.
So this story took place when I was in college, and I did not have any. I wouldn't say that I had any kind of conscious awareness that I was going through a rough time or struggling emotionally or anything like that. So that's why when I found myself in one of my professor's offices, for some reason, I don't even remember what course this was for. I don't remember the professor's name. I don't remember even the topic that this professor taught. I think it was in the humanities. So not science, but
Isn't that crazy what we do remember and what we don't?
Yeah, so that tells you how like either blocked I am or, whatever. But I found myself in this professor's office for some reason. I don't even know what. It's not like I was in trouble or anything. Maybe talking about an assignment. And for some reason that I don't even remember, I just found my eyes starting to water, just starting to cry or sob or just some kind of emotional breakdown. And what happened next was the professor made a phone call and made an appointment for me with a counselor or psychiatrist, psychologist that she knew. She made an appointment. She told me, here, go to this office at this day and time. And I went. I drove myself to this office, had an appointment. And after I had a couple of follow-up appointments. I think I had a total of like 3 different appointments with this counselor. And in the course of those appointments, I realized I was gay. Like I actually said those words. It's like, I think I'm gay. And after that, well, I went on my merry way and was gay. I mean, but so that completely shifted things. And I just want to, I guess the main point of the story is that this professor, a case could be made to say that this professor saved my life.
Yes,
because who knows,
absolutely.
Right? Who knows what would have happened if she had not like literally picked up the phone, made an appointment, instead of saying, "Oh, you should see somebody," or here's a counselor's card, call her.
So it sounds like you were depressed. You don't have, all the details. You were depressed. You found yourself in your professor's office. You broke down. You remember the emotional component of breaking down. She took it upon herself to call a therapist of some sort, gave you the number, said, "Hey, show up here." You did. You realized that person helped you come out, and that helped to lift the depression.
Yep.
That's huge.
And here, I just realized this now. Who paid for this? I think my professor paid for it. I don't know. Because I don't have any recollection of being like getting a bill or, having to deal with any of that.
Yeah. And I think, what you're saying about how she didn't just say, "Hey, you know what? Here's a card of someone you might want to see."
Or, "How can I help?" She just charged it in there and she was like, "I'm helping."
Yeah. And it takes that level sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that is my story, and Sienna has another story for you, and we'll
I don't
share
feel
it.
like we're done with this story.
Oh,
but
okay.
I mean, so you felt, but do you remember feeling depressed?
That's the thing is I can't say that I do.
Okay. Maybe it was just all pent up. You felt safe in her office because you had to have felt some sort of safety in her presence in order for you to even feel like you can break down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Down.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's because it's
amazing.
either that or I just couldn't hold it together anymore.
Because you were.
But I don't.
Yep. Did you have to go on any medication or
No.
that you remember?
No.
Yeah. Wow.
I just had to be honest with myself that I was gay.
Well, that's big. That's huge, though.
Yeah.
That
The
in
truth
and of itself.
The truth is very healing, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're letting that sink in.
I think it's a great time to break for some notes and reviews from the community.
Let's do that, and then we'll come back with Sienna's story. Okay, so thank you to our listener, Ken.
Yay!
He took the time to leave a review and a rating on iTunes for this podcast. So thank you so much, Ken. And he's an original listener. He wrote, "So awesome to hear your podcasts again after 7 years of being away. Always so well done and inspiring. I believe that these podcasts and your life experiences have great potential in capturing an even bigger audience than ever." And you know what? He goes on, but I'm going to stop there and just say, Ken, thank you so much.
Yes.
And we really do hope to capture a bigger audience than ever.
We do.
So if you enjoy this podcast, if you share the same belief that Ken has, please do just take a couple seconds, go to the iTunes, the podcast app or the podcast in iTunes and just tap where, the 5th star. Because if you do that, that gives us a 5-star rating. Thank you. And you can even leave a quick review. It doesn't even have to be like a sentence. It can just be one word. You can just put great and click submit. Seriously.
That is
very
true.
We really appreciate that. And best of all is if you would just share it with your friends, like, in real life. Like, just tell a friend about it. Yep. Thanks, guys. And now, back to the show. I'm wearing all these hats. It's like,
Yes.
Hey, welcome to the show. Oh,
All right.
Okay.
So Toast if you missed it, she actually told her story of having had depression that she couldn't really remember, but about an instrumental professor truly making an impact in the trajectory of your life. Wouldn't you say that?
Yes. I mean, looking back on it,
I know what would have happened, right?
Right. Right. I don't know. So it's
right. Well,
just
maybe
like,
my story is maybe what might have happened.
Maybe.
I mean, we laugh now and all of this, but this, the stories we're telling today, we share them to let you in a little bit on our history, for the purpose of hopefully
making an impact
and helping you feel inspired that no matter if you are in a situation that we are speaking of, like if you are feeling depressed. Now, granted, there is a very wide spectrum of depression and so many different types of depression. And Toast had one type, I had another type, and there are just so many others. But we're just sharing with you our stories, hopefully to inspire that things do get better. So for my story, what I'll say is that I had already graduated from high school. I was in the middle of my first or possibly second semester of college. And just that transition alone is huge, right?
It's a big life change for people.
You're a big fish in a little pond, and then now all of a sudden you're like this little fish on this giant university pond. And right around that time, my first ever girlfriend broke up with me. And this is the girl that we talked about in the beginning that I would get teased about. They would say, she likes you, she has a crush on you. And it turned out we ended up being together. She was my first girlfriend, and for a very long time. Like, I was so enmeshed with her family. I mean, I don't know, enmeshed. Maybe that's dramatic. But I was very much involved with her family and a part of her family. And I definitely had a sense of identity that I wrapped around being her girlfriend, and more than that. But when she broke up with me, I really felt like I had nothing left. You know,
It's like the ground beneath you just disappeared.
Yes, because, you know, you can imagine, you know, through all your formative years, being with someone and then not having that person anymore, it was pretty jarring for me. And I started to just not even feel like I had a sense of who I was anymore. You know, I felt like I didn't know. I felt pretty worthless. You know, that sounds dramatic, but that's how I felt. You know, I no longer had my role, the role I had when I was in high school. I'm now on this college campus, and I know no one knows me.
Yeah, so by comparison,
nobody.
There's a feeling of insignificance, I would imagine,
yes.
right?
And then I'm now no longer her girlfriend, someone's girlfriend, longtime girlfriend. I don't have that identity anymore. So I felt completely lost. And so I felt depressed, and I remember one night attempting suicide by taking a whole bunch of pills. I took every over-the-counter and prescription medication that I could find in my house. And there were a lot of people. I have a lot of family that were living in that house, so took everything I could find, dumped it out on my bed. There were over 98 pills, all various colors and things, and I took all of it. And
how did you get to the hospital?
So how I got to the hospital is after I took everything, I was just crying, and no one was home. Then there was a moment where I started to feel the physical symptoms of having taken all those pills. And what it felt like was just this extreme stabbing pain in my stomach, unlike anything I had ever felt before. And it was like that physical pain kind of startled me out. It kind of brought me out of the mindset I was in that led me to trying to end my life.
The numbing, like the... Okay.
Exactly. And so I called my ex, and I couldn't even say anything. Like, I just, I couldn't even say, come help me. This is what I did. But she just all of a sudden was at the door, and she drove me to emergency. So here's the thing. That happened on a Friday, and then back on Monday, I was in my classes again at UH, and no one would have known.
Right.
That's what happened for me on the Friday. And one of the things is that, there was so much, I remember just wanting to keep everything from my grandparents. I was still under their insurance, but I was telling them, like, no, you don't need to call them. I'm over 18. And I was just so worried about what people would think. That I would even do this. And I believe that for myself, part of my issue, and something that I still work on today, but of course in another... Is that your alarm?
It must be.
Okay. So the alarm is going off for some reason.
Keep going.
But one of the things that I guess, the role I had built for myself is that I had always felt very good about being there for people, and people coming to me. If they had a problem, they could come to me. I'm absolutely there for you. But what I hadn't really cultivated for myself was being vulnerable back. So creating really healthy, balanced relationships. I don't feel like I had them. I didn't feel like I had many of those back then. And so to reach out to someone felt so foreign to me. So I think that's something for anyone listening out there that maybe, you are the person people go to for help.
You're the strong one, right?
Yeah, maybe take a look at that, and there might be a way that you can reframe that, where you have an opportunity to see, well, how can I create a more balanced relationship here? And how can I reveal a little bit more of myself? Because it really is in the vulnerability that we find that true connection.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to such a interesting paradox. I think the deepest, truest truths about life are all paradoxes, and I think this is one of them, and it is this, that one way, or let me start again. True resiliency includes being not resilient all the time.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like that.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like how one of the most strongest trees or plants in a storm, if the hurricane's blowing and blowing, is bamboo, because bamboo bends. It won't break, right? Like, you can cultivate resiliency in your social networks and your relationships by not always being so resilient.
Yeah.
By letting people in on your own flaws and your own weaknesses and how you need help, and basically setting it up so that there is that give and take, and there's that room for being weak sometimes. Yeah.
So why don't we move on to some takeaways? I know that was probably maybe
that's the
heavy.
First. I guess that's the first. I guess that's the first of one takeaway, is about how to cultivate resiliency.
Being vulnerable.
Yes.
Being vulnerable. But also in saying that, though, we have to also realize that for me to, look back at that time in my life and to realize, like, I was not a vulnerable person. I saw my role and how I held myself and all this kind of stuff. But I wouldn't say that we have to put the, that being vulnerable, the asking for help part of it, as a sole responsibility for anyone going through depression. Because it is it's a spectrum, right? And some people, you can't even do that. You cannot even get up out of bed. How are you going to go and find someone to talk to?
Right.
How are you even going to make a call? You cannot even, for some people, you cannot even get out of bed. So we cannot blame people suffering from depression and other types of illnesses for not reaching out.
I think that speaks to the fact that we are all interdependent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we, again, I guess that's
the thing. You make an impact.
That's the theme of the podcast, right? Yeah. You make an impact. We all have responsibility. Even slugs have an impact.
Yes. So another thing that you can do is to just start being present wherever you are. Whether it's talking to someone at the bank. Actually, who goes to the bank anymore, right? Whether it's talking to someone at the supermarket. Maybe you don't even go to the supermarket, but just anyone.
Get out of the house, people.
The person, your waiter, when you're talking with someone, when you're interacting in that way, to make eye contact, to take the time to ask how someone is. Or even if you're on the phone and you have a customer service person, I know I try to do this. I say, how are you? And I know that when I do ask that, oftentimes they're a bit shocked, because how many people actually ask them in a sincere way how they're doing? They're the ones who are normally charged with they have to provide the
good customer experience.
Exactly. And yet you don't know what kind of impact that just being present with someone has. Because basically doing that, being present with someone, is really saying, I see you.
Right.
I see you there. You're acknowledging a person, and saying, I see you by being present has so much impact. And we can all do that like
that's like oxygen
whole
for
day.
your soul.
Yes.
Right? We all need that oxygen.
Yes.
It's kind of crazy to me, like that we live in an society where things are so digitized and virtual, and it's all this technology that allows us to be so quote unquote connected and communicate, but we need to constantly beat the drum of, hey, have basic human decency. You know what I mean? Because this is what it is. It's like,
Right.
be humane.
Yes.
Like, that is the most precious thing. Respect it. Be responsible with it. That's what brings us fulfillment. That's what can save other people's lives and your own. It's like, be human. That's the main takeaway, really.
It really
and
is,
we all need tips to remember how to be human. How to be human now? Like, eye contact, and like actually listen to other people. Yeah.
But it really does, it really does matter.
It does. Yes.
Because you can really set that wave in motion, to help heal people just by being human.
Yes.
And connecting.
Yes.
All right.
There are no small things. You make an impact. I make
Absolutely.
an impact. We all make an impact, whether we like it or not. So let's make it for good.
Yes. So now your turn. We absolutely want to hear from you. Go to our blog and comment there and let us know if you've had an experience where you felt you absolutely made an impact in someone else's life, or if there was just an amazing soul that made an impact in yours. We want to hear your stories. We really, really do. So we hope that you will comment on the blog. And that's it for this podcast.
That's it for now. But we hope that you will also join our email list if you're not already. You can get our beautiful emails. We try to make them as encouraging and a source of beauty in your life and in your inbox as much as we can. So you can find out how to join that and get that in our show notes.
So until next time, this is Sienna.
And this is Toast, telling you to love life and live free.